Morning, everyone. I'm Brad Extum, and this is Jeremy Murders. He's the COO of FASS Diesel Fuel Systems. Today, we're going to go over how we got to the point where we are at and what we're going to show you today. But I want to invite you to our booth at 14,112 because everything that we go over today, I can show you the documentation. He changed the page on me, but I can show you the documentation that supports all of our claims. And we didn't even start off with that goal. I was 15 years old when I first started driving. My dad would tell me, I drove at night during the summers so that you didn't see a 15-year-old driving down in a cab over. It was a 350 NTC Cummins. And he'd tell me, I'd take over driving. He'd tell me what yardstick to wake him up at so I could drive across the chicken house. I'd be driving on the other side and then until the next chicken house. But he'd sleep at night. But then later on, we bought the engine of its time. It was a 444 Cummins. And that engine would run great for about 45 minutes. And if you come to our booth, we're going to be able to bring all this verbiage to life, okay? Because we have fuel tanks over there, agitated fuel, and how we remove and do what we do, what I'm claiming up here. But that truck would run good for about 45 minutes to about an hour, and then it'd start falling on its face. Manifold pressure would sit there and fluctuate 2 to 4 pounds before when it was still. Mirrors would vibrate more, like when you pull over and you're sitting there getting that rough idle. That rough idle is an engine out of balance, and it's also cavitating and destroying your injectors, okay? And we're gonna go through that. We kept going in for service work, and it was under warranty, but downtime was killing us. We finally started, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? Because they were replacing fuel lines, fittings, 90-degree fittings, making mandrel bends. They finally told us that they were looking for air because every time we left, it'd run good for about 45 minutes. A guy by the name of Harold Webb brought us a Cummins service topic. I don't know if you have that available, Randy, because I'm in storytelling mode. The Cummins service topic told us why we were going to always have this problem, because the technicians that were supposedly fixing the problem said eventually that they were looking for air and fuel. Well, we asked them, if you're looking for air and fuel, whenever I spin on filter, it's never full to the top. I'm going to break this Cummins service topic down into my words, okay? The source of the vapor is the fuel itself. Like water, fuel contains a certain amount of dissolved air depending on fuel temperature, agitation, specific gravity, things like that. So it told us that we were always going to have this problem, that other people were having this problem, and at this time, we weren't looking for injector life at all. Because back in the day, we had good fuel. We should have better fuel at $5 a gallon. But we were looking to fix this problem, and it was just fuel mileage and horsepower and consistent performance. As you go down the road, you agitate the fuel. When you pull over and you stop and and then the shop looks for it, it only takes about 3 minutes for the majority of air to rise out. That's why they don't find air and fuel when it's from agitation. So this service topic that Harold Webb gave us told us we were always going to have the problem. And the way that air separates out, well, let me back up a minute. So finding this out, I started pulling over, spin the filter off, fill the filter up, put it back on, run better. Kept doing it. Got tired of doing that, so I put a hand primer pump on it. I didn't have to get fuel on my hands. It'd run better, but inconsistent, so I went and bought a Mallory pump, or a Holly pump at first. But they'd go out every 30, 40,000 miles, but I got good at changing them. Then we started getting into air separation because the pump was even inconsistent. If you go to a manufacturer's test cell, their fuel tank is up on top of the building. Gravity feed, that's a positive feed. Keeps it from cavitating. There's still about 10% air and fuel in that fuel tank up on top of that building per Caterpillar, not me, Brad. You don't have that fuel tank agitating. That's where you get the majority of your fuel, the majority of your air, sorry about that. But there's about 10% air. They put the hot area to return back to another tank so they don't contaminate their supply tank. Great fuel conditions. We're going to give you that, but a little bit better, but consistent. Here's the answers that here's what I want to answer. You may have these questions, and throughout this presentation, we're going to be answering these. Why do you lose engine performance? And we're not talking about just raw horsepower, smoking tires, making smoke. We're talking about how the engine idles, how it starts, but how does that how and why does that performance change as you get a restricting filter, and what is fuel starvation? And guys, my ADD makes it hard to follow stuff, okay? So I'm gonna have to look at this. Why do you lose performance as your fuel gets hotter and warmer? Okay, again, we're going to talk about fuel starvation, i.e. also, why do we lose engine performance as we go into higher altitudes? They all kind of relate to one another. Why does the engine not perform as well with low levels of fuel? Okay, some people, especially motor coach people, semis, I noticed it also, but motor coach people can usually tell when that full tank is full versus like a quarter tank after and driving all day for a half a mile, down to a quarter tank running all day long. They can tell the difference in performance. Were you getting ready to say?
Yep, I wanted to jump in just a little bit because I'm actually up here not just to look pretty, but I want to add some color. And then, of course, when you guys have questions, I'll bring the microphone to you. But so a little bit about my background. I came to FASS, started working with the brand about 2005. I was an independent repair shop owner down in Texas. I didn't know almost from birth, I wasn't driving in a truck at 15, but being in a repair shop, working on primarily diesel vehicles for lots of years, I had experienced what I bet some of you out in the audience have experienced. Trucks that didn't run as well with low levels of fuel in the summer. They felt like they lost power. You fill the tanks up, or maybe when it's colder, it feels like it picks up some power. So from that perspective, I knew about this, but I didn't understand the science until I actually saw this man give me the presentation in 2005. So just wanted to give you some perspective from the other end of things, that each of you out there may have seen or experienced this. We want to give you the why.
The other question, and that relates to everything else that I'm going to be talking about, is that the bigger the fuel lines that you put on, up to a certain point, okay, and the bigger the filters you put on, the less of this vapor and air that we have that we're discussing. What I'd like to do is answer these for you, what's going on, show you what it causes, how it delays your injection timing, how it throws off the amount of fuel, when it's injected, the damage that it does to your injection system, and the damage that it does to your pocketbook through the way of fuel mileage. Fuel injection came about for two reasons: to inject a predetermined amount of fuel at a predetermined time. Who here has ever had air in brake lines on their car, not their air braking system? What happened? You push on the brake and it doesn't respond, right? Well, this air is also throwing off your injection timing. And if you've ever noticed, when you have a full tank of fuel, and especially now that I'm maybe bringing something to light, when that filter is full of fuel, it'll sit there and run smoother. Compare that to when you're idling. Compare that to after you've been traveling and you pull over, a hot tank of fuel is lower, it'll sit there and vibrate. That's air throwing off your timing. That air is cavitating, galling and scoring, and it also opens up your orifices. And I have this mic in my hand. I usually talk with my hands so I can describe things. But what's going on, help me out. When you have your injection system with air in it, first of all, your fuel is your lubricating barrier, okay? You don't want those metals hitting each other. They call that galling and scoring. And as that air builds in there, your injector plunger is going up and down, It's galling and scoring, and it's opening up your tolerances, okay? That's what's one of the things that's ruining your injectors. The other thing is from Caterpillar. When that plunger is coming down to compress your fuel, that fuel is acting like a shock absorber. It's spraying all, okay? They call it a fluid dampener. When there's a lack of fuel, you get up to 50% greater force onto that tip, and that's where your busted tips come from. I was at a mining seminar once, and I was a guest speaker there, and this chemist stopped me, and I got this verified through Mr. Wilson at Caterpillar, not the ball, okay, and Tom Cruise. Not Tom Cruise, but Tom Hanks, the traitor. I'm a political guy too, okay? Go Trump. And he came up on stage and stopped me. When you have air coming out of that nozzle with fuel under high pressure, you just build a cutting torch. When your injector, when those orifices are tight, yes, you get more fuel, but you lose the atomization. But when that orifice opens up, they don't open up evenly. Okay? And you start having it favor one hole, you lose atomization. Now people say my injectors last 1,000,000 miles. They will. What kind of problems do you have with that? Soot. We lower opacities when we used to be able to measure it. We lowered about 30%, give or take 5% on different applications. That's plugging your EGR and your DPF. But as it opens up, it's cutting into the piston. Randy, do you have that picture? Yeah, that video from Mark Stum. I was out doing dealer calls. I got it now. I was out doing dealer calls. This guy was crazy out in Hutch, Kansas. And it was cool. He said, "Come here, I got to show you this." He was a teacher at a tech school. He'd go in and do this. Oh, okay, that's on the fire burn. This is about burning the piston. Do we have volume? Okay, we don't have volume, but look at that piston. That's out of a stock application. And he's showing how you get those hot spots when the orifices aren't atomizing and spraying evenly, okay? That was out of a stock engine. What would happen if you turn that up? Okay, so do I have any performance people in here? Gearheads, high horse? Okay. He's got the drug back there. But that's what happens when you do not keep your injectors properly firing. And that's what FASS will keep 3 times longer at least than anyone else. Any Packer owners with a problem? What years is that?
EPA 2021 was when we really started getting lots and lots of calls about injector failures on those MX-13s. Anybody running those?
Okay.
I'm sorry? Just bought one. Well, there's been some known problems where the manufacturer are telling their owner operators and fleets that they have to run fuel treatment in order to prevent the failures. And whenever it occurs, they're having to go in and try to clean them, replace them. And of course, as an owner, you know that when that truck is in the shop, even if it's under warranty, you're not making money, right? So our job is to help prevent that. And what we know, and once we get into it, we'll show you how we do it. The fleets that we've worked with, where we install one of our solutions on those trucks, we were able to keep them on the road, even without additives.
Randy, will you show them how a good injector fires before we show them the bad injector that burns up piston? Hopefully we have sound because you'll be able to hear it. That's the bad injector. No, yes.
We don't have the smoke.
Are we able to get sound back there?
And what you'll notice when you watch that clip, pay attention to the color of the flames and the smoke.
Just normal.
Okay?
That's a good injector.
Same
That's how it's supposed to fire every time, and that's what FASS allows, okay?
And we don't have
Now
the-
this is an exaggerated, but it came off of a running truck, this injector, and look at the slow burn. I'm ready.
See it going? It's spraying. But look at all the smoke we've got. Look how slow and deliberate it is.
Yeah, because it's not atomizing.
It's not atomizing. Yeah, it'll run. It runs.
Those type of injectors causes those types of piston issues. Go back to the new one, okay? Since we can hear it, listen to the sound.
Video.
Okay.
There's just normal.
Same amount of fuel being delivered.
Just atomizing correctly.
That's what
Much
you want,
finer.
okay?
Yeah.
Consistent delivery to your injector, consistent timing, things like that. Now, how does that have anything to do with horsepower and fuel mileage? And by the way, if you put our system on and want to drive for power only, we can burn more fuel for you, okay? Because we're taking out at least 10% air. That's what Caterpillar said. Cummins says you get more air from agitation and vacuum and all that. When you increase vacuum, first of all, you remember the test cell. Now we go into the we put it on a truck. The fuel tank's down below. The engine's drawing it up through a filter. You have restriction. The more restriction that you have, the more fuel starvation that you have, i.e. vapor. So you're already starting out with, what, 3 to 5 inches of restriction these days? Is that about right, guys? On a new filter? And as that filter gets dirty little by little, you lose horsepower, fuel mileage, and now you lose injection system life. You get tired of it to a point where that restriction builds and you don't want to do it anymore, you put a new filter on. You gain horsepower, you gain fuel mileage, you gain injector life, injection system life. Injector life's easier to say. Now, what would happen if you gain from, say, 9 inches of restriction and you go to 3 inches of restriction and you gain that? What would happen if you went to a positive flow like in the test cell? That's what we're doing. We're giving you that next step, what you purchased in the first place.
It's usually about this point, I think, in most of our presentations where somebody's probably thinking, well, I got 1 million miles out of my original injectors. Okay, but let's think back to those 2 videos. As you can see, there's a definite difference between a brand new injector, and I can assure you that over the life cycle of that injector, that spray pattern, fine atomization, pop pressures on appropriate injectors, that changes. Just because you can run a set of injectors and not shut a truck down over 1 million miles does not mean that it is running up to snuff, so to speak, that it's not running at peak efficiency, so that you're getting the best fuel mileage, the best service, so that you're minimizing washing down cylinders, depositing additional carbon into your pistons, rings, ringlands, settling out in your oil, and let's not forget after treatment and EGR, because as those injectors become inefficient, producing larger droplets of fuel, that's where that unburnt fuel and extra carbon is going. It's all the way throughout your system. Our job is to keep those injectors popping like the new video as long as possible. So when we tell you that we're tripling or more the service life of your injection system, that's what it really looks like.
Here's what makes that worse. Fuel additives on for winter blend, which you won't need with us if you operate it correctly. And we have a story. Come over and see us. We'll tell you that. We only have 10 more minutes. But also, who travels in high altitudes here? Okay. I need your help again.
Yep.
The reason that you lose performance in high altitudes, one of them we don't address at all, and that's atmospheric pressure through your turbo, okay? But when you go into higher altitudes, you lose that atmospheric hand pushing down on your fuel. When you lose pressure pushing down on your fuel, you have to make up for that somewhere, and that's in restriction of vapor, vacuum. So you have to increase the vacuum, i.e. a dirty filter, kind of the same thing. So you have to increase the vacuum, which increases the amount of vapor going to your engine. Again, come see this in our fuel tanks over there. I like visuals. Hugh Hefner proved that visuals are good. We have visuals, not those kind, okay? So that's what's going on. How does this relate to fuel mileage and power, and how your engine sounds, runs. Because here's one thing: when you first put this on, you'll be able to tell it runs smoother right away. We just did the X15. He's picking up 8/10 right now, and he keeps very particular tabs on his fuel mileage. He's not the one, oh, I get 5 to 6.5. You know, he keeps the second decibel, okay? And he also knows what the weather's doing. Here's why it matters on fuel economy. Let's pretend that this is your injector. This is your piston. I'm going to exaggerate, okay? Let's say it's supposed to fire here, but you have 10% air in that fuel in that injector cup. It delays it. You have 30%, 40%. It delays it when the fuel actually enters the cylinder. So if you retard the timing, and the piston comes up close to the injector, you have less time for that fuel to distribute out and evenly amongst that piston. They call that a shorter burn. You burn less fuel, you get less from your less BTUs from that injection of fuel. Advance your timing. We're going to drop it in an oil pan, okay? You have more time for that fuel to come out and distribute around that piston. Remember, we're going to keep it like that new injector longer. We're going to keep that heat evenly distributed. We're going to advance the timing to what the OEM set it at or your tuner set it at, okay? And you're also going to notice EGTs come down and water temps and oil temps come down on the last guy that talked to me, okay? So that's what you want. You want it. Even just, you can't put it in an oil pan, okay? But you want that timing firing where you set it or the OEM set it. It's all about timing and fuel distribution.
So the retarded timing situation occurs from air and vapor in fuel, okay? We've established that. Our solutions remove air and vapor and high levels of dirt and water. And by high levels, I mean particulates. We're filtering down to 2 micron absolute in a single pass, and we're using microglass media. The best synthetic media that we can use in our systems, we're using them. We're not cutting corners and using cellulose or paper. We are making sure that we're protecting you. Along the same lines, we're also removing over 99% of the water. And typically, when one of our systems are installed, especially our traditional systems, like our titanium signature, our industrial series, they're mounted on the frame in place of your primary water separator. So they're not only doing a better job of separating water than your primary filter was, they're also filtering down to 2 micron absolute before you get to your gear pump and ultimately to your secondary filter.
Now let's talk about water separation. Who here has ever had a problem with water? Okay. Has anyone here ever run into a big batch of it and had problems? Okay. Good job. I had one hand back there that I could see. We have one customer that quit filling up at one fuel stop. And as an Indian is on the reservation, they seem to be a little loose on their requirements because I've had problems there. If you ever reach a saturation point of water with a cellulose filter, which almost everyone has out there, I've not seen anyone else besides us. Once you reach that point, any more water that comes in goes right to your injection system. And then it wipes it out. You have to replace your filters, clean the fuel, or replace the fuel, and replace the damaged components. And we've had that happen not a ton of times, right, Jeremy? A decent amount? Some. And it shuts you down on the side of the road. With us, we actually will lock that fuel down and not let it pass to the engine. So that way, all you have to do is replace our filters and then take care of the fuel situation. So it's quite an insurance policy.
It far outweighs what happens with a cellulose element, with the fact that in those emergency situations, it just lets it right through. So I'd much rather have that happen.
Guys, I just also drove to the Arctic Ocean. It was a bucket list trip. It was cool. I went up there with my 6-door. I don't know if you guys have seen the story on that, but I was hoping to fall through the ice because I went on the ice roads. But I went up there I drove to Mississippi, picked up 365 gallons of fuel. I had 3 100-gallon tanks in the bed so I could valve it, change fuel from anywhere I wanted, and put it in my bottom tank. And I had a FASS in the bed, I had a FASS down below, and I drove to the Arctic Ocean. I got up there, and I had to burn some winter blend fuel to get there so I wouldn't disrupt 2 tanks, 100-gallon tanks. I was able to start with our heaters, our Fast Connect, at minus 35 below zero. No additives, no winter blend. Just remember, I was an owner-operator, and I was trying to solve inconsistent performance and poor fuel mileage. That's all I was trying to figure out. But the process, it almost sounds too good to be true, but the process of taking the air out, the way we had to machine the blocks gave us so many alternatives, benefits, like taking out water. We used to be normal on that. People ask me, are your filters anything special? I'd say no. We buy them from Fleetguard or Baldwin. They private label, put my pretty name on them. I'd love to make money from you. I'm a capitalist. I'm not a Bernie Sanders fan at all. Or Kamala. So standing there, I was able to have the strong pump. I had to have a pump to take the air out. So we have high torque pumps that would move gelling fuel. Put a heater on, you have return fuel. I mean, we just got lucky. We were blessed. I've been blessed with great people in my customer service. I've been blessed with Jeremy, my marketing team, and we will stand behind our product. And we have not gotten to the solid million-mile motor without black eyes. So what questions do we have?
Randy, will you put up the Fast Connect, please, while we're taking some questions?
You have where you have a brand new injector with no miles, just like up there, and then one at 100,000 or a million miles next to it.
I do not have that. I'd like to get that. Mark Stum, that actually shot that video, well, I was with him that shot that video, was telling me about it. Some of his customers that went in, some of his customers, and one was, I'm trying to remember the story, but he had some, and they had it at the Cummins shop there in Hutch, and they could not believe the condition that they were in. But that'd be a great one for us to do. So thank you.
So with the putting the system on, will it still improve results for like those worn out injectors, or will it really only work if you have brand new stuff?
It will help. Like the PACCAR situation that we was talking about earlier, we will not fix damaged injectors, but we can help to some degree. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Pretty much from the point that you install, we're able to quickly slow down that rapid.
The aging process.
Exactly. And if you have another question, raise your hand. But before we go, because we're going to run out of time, I want to make sure that we touch on our new standalone monitoring system. So power and ground, ECU mounted under the hood. And I want to show you, because we hope, of course, that all of you guys consider leveraging or using what we offer to help improve your bottom line, keep your trucks on the road. Even if you're not, if you want to monitor boost, EGT, we actually can add up to 5 sensor inputs into our Connect data system. Comes with a 2 1/16 gauge, an ECU that mounts under the hood.
Jeremy,
by the way,
tell them about the heater, how I operated the heaters up there.
Absolutely. The ECU mounts under the hood. We have wireless connectivity between the ECU and that 2 1/16 gauge. So makes it easier to install because you need power and ground for the gauge, power and ground for the ECU, and we use industrial grade wireless to communicate between that ECU and the gauge itself. We also have an integrated app that connects with your phone or tablet, right? I've got one here on my phone. Bluetooth grade 5 communicates between those, which rolls me right into what Brad's talking about. So we have 2 relay outputs. If you'll look on the phone on the right, you see the 2 round buttons at the bottom. We can control a standard automotive relay remotely from your phone. Now we are limited because it is grade 5 or class 5 Bluetooth, but we've had really great luck with distance. How far was your hotel room? Did you figure out about 2 or 3 floors up?
I was on the 2nd floor.
Yep.
My truck was out 200 feet, and I could turn my heaters on and let that heat radiate and break down to wax, and I started at minus 35.
So he was able to remote control, turn on and turn off. Now, maybe you don't have a FASS yet. We hope that you consider it. It's an automotive relay. You can control lights, additional, whether it be ground effect lighting or what have you, you can leverage that. If you've thought about adding a boost, an EGT, maybe a diff temp or a transmission temp gauge or gauges to your truck or piece of equipment, by the way, this works on track hose, dozers, what have you. This was built to be standalone. Does not require diagnostic port, OBD2, that type of access. So even for your pickup, most everybody probably drives a pickup. We have the ability to connect on those as well.
Every diesel should have an EGT gauge and a boost gauge. You can troubleshoot so much and stop problems before they arise or stop failures before they arise. If you're sitting there and your EGTs are going through 13, 14, 1500 degrees and you can diagnose so much. Bruce at Pittsburgh Power, he preaches on that on his horsepower hour and stuff like that. He taught me a lot about performance and fuel mileage and stuff like that. But EGT, diesel engine without those two gauges, you're driving like this, blind.
The gauge itself can show from 1 parameter on the screen at a time up to 6. Now, I will admit, with 6 on there, driving down the road, it's a little busy. Maybe for a stationary piece of equipment where you're monitoring multiple parameters, 6 might be ideal, but you're not limited to only the gauge. You've also got the app, and the app on your phone or tablet can show up to 8, including filter life. So if you've got time or you're interested, please stop by our booth, 14112. 14112. Any other questions? Are we out of time? Okay. Thank you very much for coming out. We really appreciate your time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So if you put the FASS system on before the stock engine filters, do you still have to replace those OEM filters like at standard intervals?
Great question. So first and foremost, we don't void warranties, by the way. If you're under engine warranty or dealer warranty, it would be in your best interest to make sure you're following the correct maintenance schedule. But what we know is that basically, rule of thumb, you can pretty much triple the normal service interval. But I wouldn't want to tell you that if you have a guideline that you've got to follow for warranty purposes. Maybe you got an in-frame or got a new set of injectors. So please follow their recommendations, but do know that because of the extreme quality of fuel that we provide, that you can use that to help save on filter changes if it's after our systems. And by the way, we have not only our industrial series that mounts ahead of your gear pump, okay, on your big engine, or ahead, primarily that's what we're talking about here. We have pickup coverage as well, guys. But we also offer separation systems that install, we call them our heavy-duty drop-in fuel systems that actually install after the gear pump. Because we can remove as much air and vapor as possible before the gear pump, inevitably there's going to be a bit of agitation created by your gear pump that on like a common rail engine or unit injected, it's going to leave the gear pump, go through your secondary, and then go to your injectors. So we actually have solutions that can further take out any agitation from the gear pump after the fact. And of course, the best combination, in my opinion, would be to leverage both. An industrial series before and one of our drop-in solutions after. That was a long way to answer your question, but I get carried away. Anybody else?
Well, thank you very much for coming and have a blessed day. Be safe on your trip back or wherever you're going, but home, work, whatever, okay? Thank you.
Feel free to stop by.